Senator Thomas Harkin as evidence of the sincere sentiments of this legislative body. Senator.
At this time, Chair recognizes Senator Harkins for remarks.
First of all, thank you. Thank you to my interpreter. I thought about giving my little speech in sign language, but I'm very slow. If I gave my speech in sign language, we'd all be here all day. Maybe all night. But anyway, I thank you for this. I want to especially thank Councilman O'Brien, our former speaker, I know, of the House, Pennsylvania House, and now a long-term member of this city council. I thank you for being with me in the parade and marching in the parade this summer. We had a great conversation then. And I also thank you for your lifetime of public service. I am not unaware of the fact that you have always stood strongly for people with disabilities, for their full inclusion and participation and opportunity, both here on the City Council and before when you were in the state legislature. To Councilwoman Reynolds Brown, again, I don't know you personally, but I've read about your background and all of the wonderful things you've done for youth and children and families here in Philadelphia. But I noticed one other thing, too. I noticed you're responsible for menu labeling. That's another little interest of mine sometimes, so we'll go back and talk about that sometime. But thank you for your interest in the well-being of everyone for that. Councilman Squilla, again, thank you for your support and for being here to help read this resolution. Thank you, President Clark. Thank you for permitting me to be here. And I thank all the members of the City Council for the support of this resolution. I am now associated with what's called the Harkin Institute for Public Policy and Citizen Engagement in Des Moines, Iowa. We are associated with Drake University, a small university there. I've left all my papers there, and they are now having a wonderful display in the library in the capital city of Des Moines. And I just want you to know that this will have an honored place right there on the wall of all of the things that I have that I've accumulated over all these years. This will have a great honored place, and I thank you for it in the Harkin Institute. And it's especially meaningful to me, having an old has-been senator here. Is now out of the Senate, but I'm still working a lot with the Institute. But it's also meaningful, I think, if I just take a couple of minutes to say it's sort of what the chaplain said earlier about this city. To have a resolution like this coming from the city that gave us our wonderful but flawed Constitution and Bill of Rights. Wonderful but flawed, it set us on the path. It set us on the path, but a long, tortuous path, frustrating, lethal to so many in our country, but a path towards full inclusion and non-discrimination. To say that we still suffer from that long, tortuous path in our country would be an understatement. But nonetheless, by 1964, we finally reached that point where we as a nation said we're going to make it illegal to discriminate on the basis of race and sex, color, national origin, religion. Just one problem for some families like mine and others. There was one group left out, people with disabilities. Actually, another group, our brothers and sisters who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender too. We'll get to that, I hope. But people with disabilities were left out. Another group that had suffered discrimination, exclusion, segregation, forced institutionalization, lack of opportunity, people with disabilities. So began another long and tortuous path to ban discrimination on the basis of disability, leading to the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which basically filled that in and was the Civil Rights Act for people with disabilities. And again, at a time like this, where you have so generously honored me, like so many things in life, and as I'm sure all of you know, especially those of you who are elected to office and serve publicly, things like this are never a singular effort, nor a singular achievement. So many people worked so hard for so long. So many people gave their lives to get the ADA passed. I think of here in Philadelphia, Steve Gold. I don't know how many of you know Steve, but Steve Gold, who is now the legal counsel for ADAPT, but who back in the 80s was one of our strongest foot soldiers for getting the ADA passed. He's here in Philadelphia. To the present time, Norma Dabrowski back there, Norma Dabrowski, who also testified before my committee last year and told us we still got a ways to go on independent living and self-sufficiency. And I also think of my great friend Dick Thornburgh, our former Attorney General, your former governor, right? Dick Thornburgh, who, yes, I would applaud for Dick Thornburgh. He was so instrumental in getting this ADA passed in 1990. So I just mentioned those. There are so many more. As you all know, there were 4 goals of the ADA: full participation, equal opportunity, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency. Quite frankly, on the first couple, we've done pretty good. Mobility, streets, buses, trains. We've done pretty good in education. And we've done fairly good on independent living. We've got a ways to go there. But the one that we've not been able to really break down in any meaningful manner is economic self-sufficiency, jobs. Do you realize that over 60% of adults with disabilities in America are not in the workforce? So when you hear about unemployment being 5% or 6%, or among African Americans 15 to 20%, yeah, that's disastrous. But think about an adult with a disability. 2/3 are not in the workforce in America. We have a whole new generation coming along, my friends. They're called the ADA generation. They were born after the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. They have grown up with the challenges of being fully integrated in our social and economic life in America. They are not going to take a back seat anymore. They want jobs. They want the opportunity. They want to be able to contribute their abilities to our society. And so I can just tell you in my retirement, that's my focus. Jobs. Jobs for people with disabilities. And so, again, just 2 things I would leave you with. I come from Washington, D.C., which now stands for Dysfunctional Congress. So it's nice to be here where government still works. And a lot of the things that perhaps we used to do are devolving down to the state and local level. I would just mention 2 things as it pertains to people with disabilities, and I'll get out of here. 1, mobility, taxis, taxi cabs. Do you realize if you go to London, England today, any taxi you hail is fully accessible? Every single one. Everyone. Why not in America? This is where we started this all. We need more accessible taxi cabs. I know your city council has taken some action in this regard, and I compliment you for that, to move ahead in making all taxis accessible. And I will tell you this, whatever tax things need to be done on the local level or the state level, federal, I hope, that will enable our taxi companies and individuals. I don't know, systems are different in different cities, but to enable those who are purchasing new taxis to make them accessible taxi cabs for the future. This is one of the last of our mobility endeavors that we need to accomplish here in America. So I encourage you in that effort. And the second is housing. Housing. Most people think that all we have to do is build a few houses that are accessible. But what about me? What about a younger version of me? I'm not disabled, but I have a lot of friends who are disabled. And I want to invite them over for Sunday for pizza and a beer and watch the game. How are they going to get up the steps? So think about your architects and those who are designing your housing. And think of the term visitability, not accessibility, but visitability. My friends in the disability community know all about this. So that as we grow up, as this ADA generation grows up and others, and we associate in schools, and we'll be associating more in the workplace, and certainly in our social endeavors. But how about our own personal, inviting people over for dinner? And that houses should be made more visitable. All housing, not just a select few that are accessible, but all housing. And I will close with this. We have found over the years, and Dennis, you know this as well as anyone, that when you start at the beginning to design something that is accessible, it helps everyone. It helps everyone. Think of the curb cuts, people with wheelchairs. Well, what about people with baby carriages, older people with walkers, people who are sight impaired now don't have to, they get there. Now we have talking stoplights that talk to you about when you go across the street. But I think housing, because this is so much in the purview of local governments and zoning laws and how you design housing arrangements for people in your community. Well, that's enough. I told the president I would only take 5 minutes. I think I went over, but you have to excuse me. I'm an old senator. Once I get the mic, it's hard to shut us up. But I thank you again. I will close with this. You can always Google the Harkin Institute. I'm there. Anything I can do to be of help, support in any way. This is my singular endeavor after I've retired, working on issues of, again, mostly jobs, but other issues dealing with a more fuller inclusion of people with disabilities in our society. So again, I would just say that I may be retired from the Senate, but I'm not retired from the fight. And I'm glad to see that so many other people are in the fight too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Councilor Beatties.